Nicholas V, a Renaissance Pope. There are popes who are pragmatic and active, who like to enforce their will on kings and lords. Then there are popes who are more dedicated to the Christian life, preaching the biblical teachings among their faithful and exalting the faith of the church. Then we have the type of popes who are more avant-garde, and to some extent, scientific. Nicholas V is one of those pontiffs who sought to exalt the greatness of the church and at the same time to be the guarantor and promoter of the arts and sciences. The figure of Nicholas V stands out as an example of a high church hierarchy who promulgated important reforms to promote the arts and science, while at the same time defending the faith. This stance of the church involved the construction of new structures within the dominions of the Holy See, as well as the hiring of personnel specialised in the most avant-garde arts and sciences of the time. Nicholas V is considered a pope who brought the Renaissance to the gates of Rome. Likewise, Nicholas V is not without his shadows, since he was as firm against the enemies of the church as his predecessors. He also implemented a series of measures that ushered in a new era for world trade: slavery. The humble pontiff. The future Pope Nicholas V was born Tommaso Parentucelli in 1397 in the city of Satana in northern Italy. The son of a humble family, he dedicated his youth to studies at the University of Bologna until the death of his father, and due to this tragedy, he had to abandon his education and dedicate himself to teaching in order to live. During his days as a tutor in Florence, in the service of the Strozzi and Albizzi patrician families, he met important members of the humanist movement, which awakened his interest in this new field of culture that was preparing a change in Christian Europe. Back in Bologna, he caught the attention of Bishop Niccolò Albergati, who gave him his job as a librarian, as well as financial support to continue his studies. Among his great achievements in this period was the mission entrusted to him by his patron to begin a journey through the Holy Roman Empire, France, England, and Germany. The purpose of this mission was to gather information about the reigning houses and episcopal sees in these territories, and this mission was successfully accomplished. In addition, being a great admirer of knowledge, in his travels he collected different volumes of books and manuscripts, which were useful to the future pope. The new pope. Upon the death of his protector, the Bishop of Bologna, Tommaso was appointed as his successor. Sometime later, he played a leading role in the negotiations between the Holy Roman Empire and the Holy See, in order to stop the subversive movement of the Council of Basel. For this participation, he was rewarded with the appointment of a cardinal, and soon after he was elected pope and assumed the name of Nicholas V. He made this decision in honour of his late patron. His term of office was short, about 8 years, but it represented a period of great changes in the church. During his mandate, the diffusion of the arts and sciences spread. The Pope was a benefactor of new ideas and protected many artists in the city of Rome. Likewise, his stance against the enemies of the church, such as the anti-Pope Felix V, was firm, and he managed to push back the detractors of the Holy See. Humanism arrives in Rome. When Nicholas V arrived at the Holy See, he dedicated a great part of his efforts to bring the Renaissance to Rome, introducing several artists and scholars of humanism, such as Fra Angelico and Pier della Francesca, all of them protected by the Pontiff. On the other hand, humanism was not only installed in Rome by its members, but the Pope promoted a series of reforms that came to beautify the city, taking as a direction the ideas of strengthening the weak faith of the population by the greatness of what is seen. Among these reforms was the repair of the aqueduct Aqua Virgo from the time of Augustus, and thus to provide water to the inhabitants of Rome. Likewise, the restoration of St. Peter's Basilica began, and the Pope promoted the creation of the Vatican Library. All these great reforms required a lot of money, which, as always, is difficult to obtain, but the Pope had a great idea. The Jubilee, which consisted of a celebration that attracted the visit of pilgrims, presented an invaluable opportunity to collect the necessary income for the Holy See. Initially, the Jubilee was held every new century, but then began to be held every 25 years. These visits, which consisted of touring the main churches of Rome and thus obtaining salvation, became the Pope's best opportunity to finance his Renaissance projects in Rome. A Pope in politics. Nicholas V not only achieved great cultural achievements in Rome and in the society of his time, he also won important political victories for the Holy See. One of these triumphs was the coronation of Frederick III as Holy Roman Emperor. By this coronation, the monarch ceded his rights over the German churches, recognizing papal authority. This was the last coronation of a Holy Roman Emperor in Rome. Likewise, he managed to stop the schism coming from the Council of Bâle. The dispute between the members of the church ended with the resignation of the anti-pope Felix V. On the other hand, his greatest contribution to the foreign policy of the European kingdoms correspond to Portugal. The exploration of the African coasts began to give valuable results. Thus, characters such as the infant Henry the Navigator stood out. In the explorers' voyages, numerous groups of people were discovered who were strangers to the Portuguese, and in view of this and the knowledge of the Muslims and pagans, certain measures were taken. The Pontiff declared the papal Bullum Diversas, which granted the King of Portugal and his delegates to reduce all Saracens, pagans, and any other unbelievers to hereditary slavery. This papal decree laid the groundwork for the slave trade, since the difference between Saracen, pagan, or unbeliever was generally blurred. Moreover, this practice of slavery was reaffirmed and expanded in the papal bull Romanus Pontifex of 1455. Knowledge advocate. Nicholas V not only defended the interests of Rome, as well as expanding the influence of the Catholic faith, but also directed his attention to the diffusion of knowledge. The Pontiff was a friend of science. In spite of his bad relationship with paganism, he dedicated himself to preserve culture and work to spread it within society. On the other hand, the Pope managed to gather more than 9,000 volumes of manuscripts of invaluable intellectual value, thanks to the help of his collaborators, Enoch of Ascoli and Giovanni Tortelli. With this work, he managed to create an archive from which the future Vatican Library was nourished. Likewise, to contribute to this policy in favour of knowledge, the Pontiff hired Lorenzo Valla to translate Greek, pagan and Christian documents into Latin. The light goes out. The end of Nicholas V's days was surrounded by dark shadows. He suffered an attempt by his collaborators, a group of Renaissance intellectuals led by the humanist Steve Porcaro, conspired against him. The conspiracy was discovered and the ringleaders executed, but this undermined the Pope's morale, and with it, his wealth. On the other hand, he had to watch in the most terrible impotence as Constantinople fell under the Ottoman yoke. The Pope tried to call a crusade to defend Constantinople, but failed in his attempt. In this way, Islam was approaching from the east. The Pope saw the end of his days ill with gout on March 24th, 1455. 3 years after the failed conspiracy, and 2 years after the fall of Constantinople. I hope you liked this video, where we wanted to tell the story of a very important pope for the church, and a man who left his mark on an era. Don't forget to write in the comments which are the people you would like to see on the channel. Don't close the video yet. Before you go, please subscribe and leave us a like if you like the content. It will help us grow and keep making much more content. Now, without further ado, we say goodbye.